Hello, welcome to Uncertain Things. This is Adam. Full disclosure, this is a weird episode. You can consider it a bonus episode, really. Vanessa is away on a retreat, and I, by my lonesome here at home, got disproportionately upset about the Oscars acceptance speech made by Jonathan Glazer, director of Zone of Interest. So I needed to vent. I invited Batya Ungar-Sargon, opinion editor at Newsweek, and Eli Lake of the Free Press and the Re-Education podcast to break down why this bothers me so much. And yes, this episode is as petty, parochial, and drunk as it sounds. If you're in the mood for that, here we go. Welcome to Uncertain Things. Vanessa is out discovering herself through her ayahuasca retreat. It's not actually ayahuasca. Vanessa and I have a shared friend who's literally the authority on all matters psychedelic. She will hate me for calling it ayahuasca. I have no idea what she's doing. She's doing something psychedelic, so she can't be here. I'm angry, and I needed some reprieve. And the great thing about having an Under the Radar podcast is that you get to invite people that you admire to open up and unleash about the things that really, really fucking make you angry without being required to provide some structure and planning. Eli Lake, recently of the Free Press, this glorious institution of free thinking inquiry, and Batya Ungar-Sargon, author of Second Class. I forgot which title we ended up going with. Paragon of Populism and the Working Class.
Or as I call her, Professor Red Pill.
Indeed. Thank you for having us, Adam. This is going to be
I asked you both to join me because I just needed you, and I'm going to be a listener. I'm going to be a quiet participant, which means I'm only going to talk over you 50% of the time in order to talk about Jonathan Glazer. This can be quick. We're all drunk. We're all tired. This is middle of a Thursday night, so it's both middle of the week and late at night for some of us. I just want you both to drag me back into sanity about Jonathan Glazer. Eli, you're the storyteller. You're host of The Re-Education, which is one of the best podcasts on offering right now.
Truly.
Oh, thank you.
Truly.
Can you take us through what it is that I'm so angry about?
Martin Amis wrote him a novel about what ordinary Germans might, what their life was like as this barbarity was happening next door. And this became the inspiration and a kind of version that, for this film Zone of Interest. I have not seen it, so I really don't want to offer an opinion. My wife saw it, and she thought it was amazing. So let's just separate the art from the artist. No, I mean, I don't think you can say that he didn't deserve to win the Oscar because he gave a moronic speech.
I'm of the opinion that you can argue that Wagner is both a bad composer and a bad human.
Well, that's a separate issue. And, I'm less strong on classical music, but I will argue for various other dirtbags and cultural areas where I feel competent. But the point is that it's like if you care about the Oscars, and if you wanted to just make the Oscars have always been stupid, fine with me, but if you cared about the Oscars, it doesn't mean we should just leave that part of it aside. Okay, so now what did he say? What he said was the most charitable explanation is that he didn't want his Jewishness, or he renounces his Jewishness, or he refutes rather his Jewishness, which I don't even know what that means. So he's arguing with his own Judaism. But he doesn't want what he's saying, I refute this idea that my Judaism and the Holocaust should be used to justify the dehumanization of Palestinians. That's the sum up.
And unfortunately, a quick Googling, because I'm drunk, so I'm unprepared. The first article that comes up when I search Jonathan Glazer Jewishness is a Vox article. The headline of the fucking article is, Batya, you'll take it personally. No, the director of Zone of Interest did not disavow his Jewish identity at the Oscars. Okay, so the quote is, right now, we stand here. This is a quote. This is Jonathan Glazer standing at the Oscar. Right now, we here as men We stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people, whether the victims of October 7th in Israel
Right.
or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all the victims of this dehumanization. I got an ad because this is Vox, so I got an ad pop up in the middle of the reading. All the victims of this dehumanization, how do we resist?
The fundamental flaw is that the occupation was not the cause of October 7th. And it elides the obvious fact that the people who run Gaza started a war against Israel. And so Israel is now going to war. And so it sort of erases that by saying, no, it's been one big war since the occupation. And the occupation in this case is so, we don't even know what he's talking about, because some people say occupation and they mean all of Israel, and some people just mean the West Bank and Gaza. And it's just, what it does is it erases the agency for October 7th. It's as if, like, you're telling the history of the conflict, but you don't mention the massacre. You don't mention, 1972 Munich Olympics. You don't mention, what's that famous road where they massacred a whole family in a car? Like, these are things that are designed they start wars. I mean, since time immemorial. And by the way, the Palestinians know they're starting a war, or they're acting in a war. So removing that agency allows you to believe this sort of demonic defamation of Israel, which that's the only way you can do it. If you tell the other side of it, and then people can differ in some ways, but you're not going to get like this sort of over the top Israel's committing genocide stuff, because they just won't teach the other side of the story, or tell, I should say.
The thing for me about this was, it was the most unbelievable Rorschach test that I have seen in a very long time, because it brought out many people defending him, and they were all the people you would expect. But it was like, if you heard, we stand here as two men who refute our Jewishness, that's how like 95% of Jews heard it, because what he said after that was a refutation of Jewishness, right? So, of course, yes, there were words after that, but the words after that themselves refuted what it means to be a Jew. And so all of the people who came out to defend him were either the anti-Semites who hate us, or the pick-me Jews, right? Who are like...
Well, hold on 1 second. Batya, I would say this, though. Neither one of us are rabbis, and I take a very loose definition of like who's a Jew. And if they want to call themselves Jews, I don't have a problem with it. But they're not speaking for that many Jews. We know that.
I didn't say they're not Jewish.
My bad, because I just want to make sure that, like, I can't stand what he said. I share your anger, but I would not come here and say they weren't Jews, because there's a long tradition of horrible as a Jews, like Johannes Pfefferkorn.
See, you're literally glazering me. I didn't even say that.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to glazer you.
After a week of being told I said something I didn't say, it's just like... This really brings out the worst in people, this story.
People who are not necessarily plugged into the platform once known as Twitter, Batya has been receiving a lot of backlash for pushing back on Glazer's quote-unquote refutation, which also is just a bad use of the phrase refutation. The word refutation doesn't apply to anything in the rest of the sentence. It's just not what refute means.
By the way, I'm like not even aware of it. Like when that starts to happen, when I see myself getting dogpiled on Twitter, I mute the tweet and move on, so I don't have to think about these people, because they don't exist to me. Like they really do not exist to me. So like that is not, I have zero emotional relationship with anything that happens on Twitter, because it's...
Well, I have vicarious emotional relationship to this thing that happened to you, because I care about you.
Sometimes I get into a Twitter hole and it does affect my moods, and it's a sign of weakness when that happens. I hope we could all have the discipline to like tune that stuff out.
What I was going to say is that it was a real Rorschach test, because it brought out all of the pick-me Jews who, just like Glazer, spend their lives signaling to non-Jews who hate us that they are the good Jews. And that is what essentially Glazer did. I mean, to me, that was like the real crime, was he stood there and he said, we refute our Jewishness being hijacked by the occupation, and the Holocaust being hijacked by occupation. I mean, who's doing that? Nobody's doing that. No one is out there saying we justify crimes against the Palestinians in the name of the Holocaust. So he invented a group of Jews who don't exist in order to paint the mainstream of Judaism as corrupt and evil, and to suggest that he was not like those bad Jews. He is a good Jew. So in a moment when Jews are being attacked by Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and the woke leftists and the university, he chose this moment in which Jews are uniting around the world to say, wow, like, you know, Israel, we must stand by Israel, to say, no, all of you mainstream Jews are evil and bad and corrupted. I am the good Jew. And he did it for the braying applause of, among other people, a German woman who played a Nazi in his movie. Like, it was such a perfect, beautiful encapsulation of the stupidity of the woke left and how they literally enact the evil that they pretend to be fighting. I mean, to me, that was like the real crime, was the pick-me-ness of it, giving succor and comfort to our haters. And then, of course, what Eli pointed out, which is he literally blamed October 7th on the occupation. I mean, like, for that, I can't, that is what I'm saying is a refutation of Jewishness. I'm not going to say he's not a Jew, but if you show up and you blame the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust on the Jews, you are refuting what it means to be a Jew. I mean, that's the end of it. So yes, it was a refutation of his Jewishness. And him standing there going, how do we resist the dehumanization? He is the dehumanizer.
Okay, can I ask you a question? If he had just said, stop the genocide, in some ways that would be less offensive, even though it's really offensive to say it's a genocide. But if he had just talked about what was happening right now and didn't get into the agency of Hamas, is that within, like, how far in that critique?
Honestly, I didn't have a problem with anybody wearing those pins. I thought there was a lot less Free Palestine and, you know, ceasefire than I was expecting. Yeah. There was, 5 people wearing pins? Like, Nebuch, you feel sorry for them. Like, even poor Billie Eilish didn't have the guts to say anything. She won, and she knew, you better not say anything in this room, right? Like, there was, like, this aura of, like, everybody knew you weren't supposed to talk about it. And then he broke the silence. And then, of course, you know, but to me, there was a lot less than I was expecting.
But I think that framing makes me feel sympathetic to the people who broke the silence, though, because you're saying that there was the Hollywood aura of where Jews were not supposed to talk about this, and then he was the one person to break it. You're making me sympathetic towards Glazer.
I think they were trying very hard to be less political this year, and they really managed until the last moment when Jimmy Kimmel couldn't help but read a tweet by Trump, which was, by the way, funnier than anything he had said all night, right? Like, jokes on him, right? But there was, I think there was an attempt to address the criticism of the woke, you know, that it's gotten so woke. It was just pretty apolitical, which was, I think, pretty good.
Isn't that an amazing observation, by the way, as a little, like, bubble in our conversation? The fact that Trump tends to be significantly funnier than any of the late night hosts trying to mock him, because the late night hosts trying to mock him are pandering. Trump doesn't really.
Adam, I gotta disagree. If you should go on YouTube and watch the brilliant Stephen Colbert's Vax Scene. And it's this great thing with, like, Needles doing, like, a kind of New York, you know, sort of kick line. Radio City Hall. He's really, like, honestly, when I think of, like, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Stephen Colbert, that's my, you know, I mean, I guess we had Chappelle and it's the Rushmore. Colbert is such a he's so brave in his criticism. I mean, like, no one else would even deign to, like, ever criticize a Republican, and he's out there, like, really taking chances every single night. I mean, when you think about all of these old white conservatives who run these media companies and, like, how these corporations just don't get it. Yeah.
I'm 3 martinis in and one Lafroig that it took me 20 seconds to realize that you're ironic. And that it's on me, and that's my shame.
I wanted to there's occasionally, like I said, I have this thing, I know we're freestyling, but it's late at night, that was the style. I sometimes just want to try to get into the head of somebody who would say something totally ridiculous. So I thought, like, one of the most ridiculous things I could think of would be someone who would at this point defend Stephen Colbert. That show is regime propaganda. There, I said it. That's what it is. That's like fucking it's North Korea for, like, Silicon Valley, Cape Cod. You know what I mean? It's like, this is like the billionaire North Korea news service.
The moment that broke me, and we'll get back to our Jewish heritage in a second, but it's 7 years ago, 6 years, I don't remember, but it was the Trump days, and I was working at CNN, and if you remember, during 2017 to 2019, every weekend at CNN, there would be full wall-to-wall coverage of the late night shows and especially SNL as, look, this is our only outlet to really get into the truth of the Trump regime and the corruption of the Trump administration. Beyond being dumb and naive and propagandistic, it was just boring. It was incredibly boring. And it was...
Or like the Atlantic's issue on like Trump's The End of Democracy that they had like a couple months ago.
But again, with this aura of we are so brave for saying the truth, no one will admit.
You're part of the resistance. Any minute, you might have to go to a safe house. You're part of the resistance.
Right.
They might drag you off in the middle of the night. Who knows what's going to happen to your family?
Yeah. Is it Robert De Niro? Was he the one who was on Bill Maher who was like, Trump's coming for me? And even Bill Maher's extremely liberal audience just started laughing. Like, what are you talking?
Make sure that you have some canned goods with you in case they grab you to the gulag. So I remember in those days, specifically a video of Colbert where the punchline was something like Trump is negotiating with Russia using his mouth, or as it's otherwise known, Putin's dick holster. Oh, the edge.
I mean, just a pro tip. It's a little bit of a muddled message because usually fascists, dictators like to play up patriotism and accuse their enemies of treason. So if you're accusing the guy who's also a dictator of treason, you're kind of normalizing charges of treason. So it's not that smart. It's like enough already. I can't take it. His actual policy, and I do this for a living. I mean, like that's my thing, is like foreign policy. His actual policy on Russia was tougher in so many ways than Obama's. So for them to pretend that like they're the tough guys on Russia is absurd. It's just, I mean, and that alone should have been enough to like have a reasonable person, you know, who calls himself a journalist to say, I don't think this Russiagate thing might be working out. But it didn't. That's the problem. Anyway, we've talked about how the media is broken. Let's talk about Jonathan Glazer.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. So we're going to go Talmudic Rabban Gamliel on Jonathan Glazer's ass, right?
Well, if one more thing, hijack's an interesting verb given the history of Palestinian nationalism. I'm sorry, the Jews did hijack. The Jews, like in 48, there was a lot of shit done in the 40s. Fair enough. Hijacking, I think Palestinians are the Henry Ford of fucking hijacking. They're like, they took it to another level. Do you know what I mean? They like mass produced hijackers. That's what they did in Lebanon.
Like that. Who was that guy who had that tweet that was like, you can't do anything anymore? What's that guy? You're not even allowed to hijack planes.
There was a literal tweet that got truly shared belovingly.
So good.
Complain about how oppressed the anti-Israel crowd is, because of course it is the Israel lobby that dominates the discourse in the West. And they said, we can't protest freely, and we can't criticize Israel, and we can't hijack planes.
There's like a long list of things.
You joke, but this is what people were talking about in 68, and the next year we got Weather Underground. What I'm worried about is historically, when you have people out of their fucking minds, they usually are not satisfied at a certain point with just simply protesting. That's a fact. It's not to say everyone. It's to say that like SDS split in 69 and one faction became Weather Underground. Now, Weather Underground really wasn't as horrible. Al-Qaeda, much worse. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to like overstate it.
I mean, they were much more into having sex in all various positions than they were with the bombing part.
But there were other radical bombings that like the left did. And like, if you really believe this shit, this is why I'm back to Batya, who is our sage. If you really believe that this is the reality, the Jews run the media, the Jews run like everything in politics, you can't protest freely because of the Jews, and the Jews are committing a genocide in Gaza. Okay, if that's what you really believe, then at a certain point, aren't you kind of a pussy if you just tweet and you just post on TikTok?
Okay, so this comes back to one of my constant points, which, see, Adam, you're like, it feels like we're in mishpacha, but obviously we can all get canceled for anything we say now, but whatever.
Oh, yeah. Adam, this is like a...
You can get canceled. What are you talking about? You work for Newsweek. You work for the Free Press. You're post-cancellation.
The things I say a lot, like, okay, when I'm trying to talk to Jews and tell them to stop the fear-mongering and telling Jewish students that they're like unsafe on campus, one of the things I often point out is exactly what you're saying, which is that leftists are physical cowards.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they like to gather in big groups and chant and scream things, but they actually don't. Today's leftists are like really soft.
90% are total cowards. 10% are ready to rumble. Or 5%. Even if it's 1%, with social media, that's a lot of fucking bad guys.
Yeah, but they're all in Portland. Like, they're not on the East Coast. Like, East Coast leftists.
You met my prepper friends, Pavel and Sophie. I have two friends who are Jews who started off as pure liberal Haaretz reading Jews who then migrated to Canada out of the pure belief that Israel is such a horrible occupation state that we need to embrace the West. We need to move to Canada. And then 3 years in Canada, I realized, oh, okay, the West is deranged. What we actually need is to move to New Hampshire and buy guns.
Wow. Talk about your horseshoe.
Their slogan now is, thank God that the left hates guns.
Right, that's the thing. They're scared of guns.
Batya, should Jews buy guns?
Should Jews buy guns? They
should
don't
Jews
need
buy
them.
guns?
They don't need them. Like, the only Jews who are under physical threat is like Orthodox Jews living in Brooklyn who, like, in 2018, 2019, 2020 were being beaten up.
Exactly. They should be like, there should be like, so they should maybe, if they carried.
So, okay. So this is, Eli, when I said that Jews should buy guns, Eli explicated that Jewish Jews should buy guns, which brings me back to the Glazer thing.
Yes.
One of my favorite things is that he said, I refute my Jewishness being hijacked.
I refute LL airplanes getting hijacked. How about that? That's why I support Israel.
I just refute bad things happening. I refute bad moods. I refute depression. My beloved boss, Jonah Goldberg, said in talking about this, he recounted Glazer as saying, I refute my Judaism. And that's not what he said. He said, I refute my Jewishness. And
Adam's like hung up on like that he said it badly. Like, that was the real crime. It was the aesthetic crime of his grammar.
No, yes. Batya and I are in this forever battle between what is the core the core principle that guides human history. Is it class or is it aesthetic?
I have a third option. Grudges.
I think grudges is aesthetic.
No, it's
not aesthetic. Grudges move history.
He said the fact that he said Jewishness and not Judaism shows that he was assaulted on the basis of vibes. The thing that bothered him is that the war in Israel, the war between a country that has been invaded, had its citizenry raped, slaughtered, and kidnapped, the fact that that country decided to go back and defend itself. All that war stuff it just doesn't really mesh well. It just clashes with his cutesy Jewishness of bagels and Katz's Deli and Jerry Seinfeld.
What if he gave a press conference, Adam and Batya? What if he gave a press conference and was like, I've given a lot of thought to what I said at the Oscars. And what I want to say right now, I hope will clarify my position. From the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. Go Hamas. I love what you've been doing, and I just hope that you survive.
Oh, that was your first question, and you're right. That would have been so much less offensive.
No. I think no. In some ways, that would be kind of comically hilarious and a lot of things. But what I meant was, what if he just criticized the Palestinian death toll or the immiseration of Palestinians as a result of the war?
Much less offensive.
That's what I want to try to drill down on, though.
He sat down and wrote this speech picturing the milieu that he swims in, which is full of apparently a German actress playing a Nazi who thinks Israel really shouldn't defend itself. the guy sitting next to her who had a Palestinian pin, right? Like, he sat there and thought, how can I prove to them that good Jews like me still exist?
Yeah, you're right.
Right? That was
exactly.
the disgustingness of it. It was like, and he sat there and wrote it down. It wasn't like it was a spontaneous, like...
Yeah, you're right. He pulled out a piece of paper to say this.
He thought to himself, if I am given the platform at this event, I'm going to use it to make sure that the anti-Semites know that there are some Jews who are on their side. We're not all bad.
Oh, that's fantastic, Batya.
He's desperately seeking the approbation of the degenerate elite that wants him dead.
That's just great.
Chas v'shalom, you know, it's like... Oy.
That wants all of us dead. That they want Judaism reduced to the idea of a perpetual victim that only exists in Mrs. Maisel and has no right to defend itself against any entity that literally is trying to exterminate it.
Right, because so long as Jews are victims, they can rank on the oppression hierarchy and thus can have some modicum of virtue.
Hold on, wait. I feel like I'm playing the devil's advocate, but what if he just said...
Allahu Akbar. How would you feel about that?
Okay, right. What if he just said, no, I'm being serious now. What if he said, listen, my people suffered greatly on October 7th, just as we did in the Holocaust. But that cannot be an excuse for, the brutal bombardment of Palestine.
Then you will have a conversation about what does war look like? What does it look like?
Yeah, I agree. But that's not like, we wouldn't be freaking out right now if they said that. Because I think that's kind of what he wanted to say. What he wanted to say is like, listen, obviously I just made a Holocaust movie and that dehumanization was terrible. But this is too. And there is something really horrible about that, which is, that's the equation of that, right?
Okay, first of all, okay, there are two dimensions to this question. There is the version that assumes somebody who's not trying to pander to their... That's not even pandering. It's trying to prostrate to their liberal elite environment. It's just trying to make an argument. Look, I know that my film can be interpreted in many different ways right now at this particular moment. And I worry that this will be used as a nationalistic, jingoistic tool to justify unquestioning violence perpetrated on a civilian population. And that's a very noble position to have, right? And I think all of us have it.
If he played that, though, they should play, like, as he's walking off, the sad trombone music.
It's also, like, who the hell is saying we're justifying the bombardment of Gaza based on the Holocaust? Like, bitch, October 7th was 6 months ago! What are you talking about?
See, that's a genius. It's not about the Holocaust. It's about his film about the Holocaust. Because if there is one thing that we know about filmmakers and artists, especially the Oscar-wielding kind, is they have no doubt that geopolitics revolves around and responds to their work. So given that narcissism, he might have felt the need to create a distance between him and the Jews, the bad Jews, who would use his...
That's what I'm saying. He invented non-existent bad Jews to create a distance from them.
I am really worried that you, my viewers and my prize givers, will make the mistake of associating me.
Right.
Just because I made a film about Jews and my last name implies Jewishness. Again, not Judaism, God forbid, but Jewishness. That you might think that because of that, I support what is happening right now in Rafah.
By the way, for the record, I don't support what's happening in Rafah because the IDF has not invaded Rafah yet. When the IDF invades Rafah, I will support what's going on in Rafah. For now, I'm actually like, you know what? Yeah, the verdict's out right now. Okay. We'll see.
Wait, can I do a slight detour? Because this is something I've noticed recently. Isn't it funny that the Democrats' new way of saying I support Israel is Bibi Netanyahu sucks? Like, that's their new code for I stand with Israel, but don't hate me, Dearborn. No, it's like this new method.
Democrats are helping Bibi. Like, it's like he can turn to his right-wing base and say, you see what Biden is saying about me? You know, I'm the only one who can stand up to Biden.
The idea, I'm willing to bet money that this is Bibi's idea.
Totally.
Telling Biden, look, you need to work with your base. That's fine. Tell him that it's on me. Tell him that you hate me. I don't give a shit. As long as you give me the munitions, as long as you keep giving me the aid and the bombs, I don't give a shit. People were texting me today about Chuck Schumer just giving a speech about the need to replace Netanyahu. It's like, Netanyahu, I'm sure, approved that speech.
It's an ad for Netanyahu. It's like a domestic ad for him.
But it's kind of bad in the sense that it would be like, this is a great time for the unity of the Jewish people. And I think that till now, the diaspora Jews have really been unified behind Israel. And it's a nice thing. And with the exception of the Yazid Jews, who are loud but small. But like, I think it's bad to have...
Wait, Eli, you're not willing to accept my pick-me analogy? You don't like that?
I need to think about it. I mean, I think it's good. Like the idea that they're just weak and they want to be...
Well, a pick-me is like, a pick-me girl is like a girl who's like...
Oh, I thought you said pygmy. I was like, why? Like, what are you getting all...
No.
Like, you like Claude Levi-Strauss on me? Like, you're like going into the bush?
Oh,
like,
you don't know what a pick-me is? Oh, this is
No,
what...
I'm sorry.
A pick-me is okay, a pick-me girl is like one of those girls who's like, oh, I don't diet. I eat pizza. I eat fattening things.
Right.
Like, I don't put on
Okay, got
makeup
it.
like those girls. It's like, pick me, pick me. I'm not like
Right.
the others, you
Got it.
know? And it's like
Right.
designed
I love
to
fantasy
appeal-
football.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like girls are like, I love the
Yeah.
NFL. It's like
I
my
love when
favorite
you
thing is
play
just
your
watching
guitar.
football.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just the only thing I want to do is listen to you play guitar.
Yeah.
God, we're suckers for that shit. Men are. Being a creative person, like I'm just saying, like as somebody who like writes for a living, I'm like, if you tell me you like my writing, I'm like, oh, so interesting.
Yeah.
It's so pathetic.
Yeah, and women are the opposite. Like, if you don't insult us a little bit, forget it. Like, you come on with the compliments. It's just...
I think it depends on the woman.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
Well, there's like good, you know, anyway, but that's an interesting, the pick me girl is, you're right, that is like that.
It's
like,
they're the pick-me Jews. Like
yeah.
JVP.
Jonathan
like,
Glazer's like, I really want to listen to your Abu Nidal guitar stylings.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like...
I totally want to come to your dorm and listen to you play acoustic guitar and
like-
songs about how my ancestors stole your ancestors' land.
Pick me, Mendela. Pick me, Dr. Mendela.
I shouldn't say this because I don't want to get like personal stuff, but let's just say many years ago, I dated somebody who was very like on the pro-Palestinian side. And there was like this, she used to play this song. It was like a version of like Arabic pop stars singing John Lennon's Imagine. And I used to always say, oh, hold on, I got a translation. Imagine there's no Israel. Like, it's like, she used to get, but it was like for like some benefit for like, I don't know, like some like Palestinian kids in the middle of the Second Intifada or something.
I have a similar funny story. I'll just tell really quickly, but like when I was at the Forward, they hired somebody to, actually an amazing musician, Daniel Kahn, to sing Hallelujah in Yiddish for some anniversary, something for someone who like that was their favorite song or he was their favorite musician, I don't remember. And then somebody had translated the Yiddish back into English for people who don't speak Yiddish. Now, you might have thought that the English translation of the Yiddish version of Hallelujah would just be the original Hallelujah, but
It's
no,
not.
it wasn't for some reason.
It's like, is it like hyper nationalist?
It was just like
singing about
slightly
Trump War.
different. Like it was like somebody had just listened to his version in Yiddish and then come up with their own
That's so
translation.
funny.
All right, where were we? Adam, is this working? Is this what you wanted?
This is for my own edification. I literally put the word "my own edification" in the
Are you
email.
feeling edified? Have you been?
Well, I'm in the process. Stop edging me, Batya.
I have a lot of Shabbos cooking to do.
So I guess just to conclude this feast of self-indulgence, we all found this speech incredibly annoying and have been texting about this for a week. Jonathan Glazer has lived rent-free in our head for a week. Honest answer, why in the context of everything that's happening right now, why did this stupid fucking speech get on our nerves so much?
For me, it was, I think it was and I'm glad I gave a little butthurt back. I'm not going to lie about that, but it was the succor that it gave our enemies, and the language that it gave the ones who pretend not to be anti-Semitic, which is exactly what a pick-me does. It makes all of the regular people it makes the hatred for the regular Jew seem justifiable, right? Like, he gave language to the haters to say, that's right, their Jewishness and the Holocaust have been hijacked to justify the occupation. That's right, right? It gave comfort to our enemies. And that is an unbearable thing.
Yeah. I think there's more.
For me personally, it reopened the wound. Like, after it reopened the wound, I think it's because I generally feel like, I know everyone doesn't agree with me, but I generally feel like Israel is not only winning the war, but winning the PR battle. I just don't. If you're not only online and existing in elite spaces, you can't come away feeling like people are not on Israel's side. 80% of Americans side with Israel.
Did Glazer thing make you doubt your confidence in the idea that we're winning?
No, it didn't. But I do think it was the joy it brought our haters. It's a very base thing. It gave them, it made them think that they had, all of this time, there had to be in the back of their minds. It's this whole, that there are good Jews who denounce this stuff, and I get asked that a lot. Those few times I'm allowed into the far left or anti-Zionist spaces, people will be like, well, Jews are leading the ceasefire call, And it's well, yeah, 5% of Jews are not Zionists, but every anti-Semite has one of them, in their back pocket. And so they have a huge platform, right? But generally, I think they're just so irrelevant to the public discourse in America. You cannot compare the public discourse here to Canada or Europe. You just can't. There's no mainstream rape denial in America. That just is not even on college campuses. That's not happening. And when Judith Butler said her horrible thing, everyone was like, "Oh my God!" There is a decency here that reigns supreme, and I felt like it just broke by masquerading as decency, and giving stupid people a language to think that is the decent position when it is disgusting.
In the Oscars, Eli?
First of all, that was great, Batya. Okay, so I'm going to zag. You know what I'm going to zag? I'm going to zag for your podcast. I think there's a silver lining. And here's what it is. The Zionists, the Jews, we are owed a big-time Oscar winner to come out and do the equivalent. So I look forward to the 2025 Oscars where, I don't know, the Spielberg's a Zionist. I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Jerry Seinfeld, if he makes a movie. Who knows? Get a good Zionist up there. And I want them to say, I dedicate this Oscar to the IDF. Keep going, boys. You're not just fighting for us. You're fighting for civilization. And then, you know what I mean? And then here's the number for a hotline to get, those hardworking troops in Gaza, pizzas, meals, whatever, and, give out the number. That's what I want. We are owed one, okay? Because I don't count, that should not count as, the Jews are, you know what I mean? Marlon Brando had the fake Indian, that story, right? And, the Oscars have always kind of had a political side of it. So, let's just get a political side on the other, you know what I mean? Just someone get up there and say, my two-state solution is Judea and Samara.
This is going to take a long con because they'll never give it to someone they know thinks that. So we need to start planning this long con right now. It has to be the wokest movie.
Well, also, it would be wouldn't it be nice, Batya, if it's true that the Jews really are running Hollywood and this was such a brave act of dissidence? You know what I'm saying? Why can't someone just get up there executive of the year and it's just and one more thing. If I see any more of these bloody hands, which are actually a famous photograph of one of the worst freaking terrorists of the last 20 years. By the way, if I see one of those, you are permanently blacklisted from the Warner Brothers lot. You will not be allowed
For the context of our naive listeners, the bloody hands that has been used as a symbol of a Palestinian supposedly mourning their own dead children or whatever. I don't know what their...
Mark Ruffalo is morally retarded. He has like, he's just...
In truth,
yeah,
the image of the Palestinian shouting out of the window holding the bloodied hand is from a 2001 massacre. Batya, I was in Israel at the time. Weren't you in Israel? You were also in Israel.
I remember that. That doesn't mean that people who want to say we have blood on our hand, you have blood on your hands, are referencing.
No,
there exists an image.
There exists a video from that lynching of a couple of Israelis who traveled into the West Bank in 2001.
Their bodies were literally sliced open. And a crowd gathered with such joy, and they would put their hands in their blood and hold their hands up like this out the window.
Yeah.
That happened in 2000 in the West Bank. The people who designed this thing, this pin, I promise you, have no idea that happened.
I'm not saying they're not morons, but you could be a moron waving a swastika without knowing what a swastika means.
I feel like if I could sit down with Mark Ruffalo for an hour, I feel like I could convince him on this. He seems to me like a very kind, very silly person with very stupid opinions. But I just think I'm putting that out there into the universe. If I could have an hour with him, I think I could change his mind on this.
Yeah, if you can have an hour with literally every person in the world, I think you can probably moderate them.
No, the pick-me Jews, forget it.
You know what, Batya? I think you're probably right. But we don't know for sure. Just like we don't know that AIPAC isn't behind the new TikTok bill. We don't know.
That's
if you don't like innuendo, then stop giving me 25 fucking years of innuendo. You don't like it, whatever. You know what? Mark Ruffalo is still an idiot.
Ila, you had something to ask Batya, I believe.
This is actually probably for another podcast, Batya. So I'll just cut to the chase. You in the Trump train? You voting for Trump?
Wait, are you voting for Trump?
That means she's not. Because otherwise she would have said yes.
I would have voted for Trump if he'd really put up a fight after January 6th because that election was stolen. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I want the person who won't vote for Trump. No, I don't think I can. See, the thing is, I can't vote for Biden. But I can't vote for somebody after January 6th.
You also started the neither Trump
Exactly.
trend.
I'm the neither Trump guy. So I can't. But that said, because I don't think Biden's all there. I don't know if you've noticed, but he seems a little mentally slow and maybe not at his best.
I think this is all way overstated. Like every mistake he's made. No, I'm serious. Ask me what year I got married. I literally would have to open my email to find out. I have no idea. And like mixing up El Sisi and like the president of Mexico, who among us hasn't made a mistake like that when we're tired? I just feel all that is overstated.
What about the public schedules? What about the many mistakes that he's made? What about the fundraisers where he's talked about
mistakes like that all the time?
Russia launching a nuclear war, which is like really bad for the stock markets and everything like that. I mean, I'm just saying there's enough times when he's not sharp enough and he has to talk to people that it's already potentially kind of been a problem. And do you trust that he's like sharp enough to like make these decisions at this point? I mean, it shouldn't be the line. I'm not saying that he's incapacitated. I'm simply saying that like he's really declined. Everybody can see it.
I'll tell you this. The only thing he's done that I don't think an Obama administration, a third Obama administration would have done exactly the same as him is stand by Israel after October 7th. That is the only thing he's done that you couldn't say any other Gretchen Whitmer, Newsom would have done, Obama, Clinton.
But my point is that I won't vote for him because I don't think he's all there. And I think increasingly his next term would be run by a committee of Democratic technocrats.
But
I think Democratic technocrats.
But the Democrats are a committee of technocrats. Like that is how they rule. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So what do you imagine is going on right now in the White House?
Yeah, honestly, I can't. That's a hard question to answer from a reporting perspective. And I just have too much respect for like what that would actually mean that I don't want to venture a guess at this point because I don't know the answer there. But I feel confident in saying that I have seen him on camera and seen enough events and more than just a few. And I'm not just, I mean, like you could explain away if it was just the Robert Hur report, but that's like our 25th piece of evidence of this, that he's not always there and that we know that just it's probably going to decline, because we saw this with Reagan and we saw it with other. So if he's going to decline, then that means that more and more there's going to be people like Jake Sullivan or Tony Blinken or, you know, Samantha Power at USAID or something. You know, I have no idea, but I'm just saying that it's not like having a young, vibrant president in command, knowing that this guy is in control of this unwieldy thing called the American state.
And yet that is still so much better than so many of the other Democrats on offer who suck on purpose.
Totally. But we're through with the primary. I'm saying it's going to be Trump or Biden. And like with Trump, I'm like, he is crazy, but sometimes the crazy is good because it scares our adversaries. He has been defamed. There is a lawfare campaign, which is one of the reasons I don't support the Democrats. So it's like, it's really a...
But also Trump really resents Netanyahu because Trump feels that Netanyahu insulted him personally.
Netanyahu is like, I'm not worried about that, actually. Like, I think Trump has like an understanding of geopolitics in some ways that is far more simplistic and cartoonish than Biden, but is actually better for America and Israel and the world.
Okay, so can I tell my story that I think explains Trump's foreign policy, and then we can conclude with this. Once I was on the subway in New York, and there was a kind of like slightly crazy person, you know, they were like sitting there like kind of like talking to themselves and laughing at themselves and making faces and like muttering and so forth. And then the doors open at the next stop, and like another person got on who was like really crazy, like legit crazy, like screaming at themselves and like punching in the air and like really acting out. And the slightly crazy person immediately pulled it together, like completely pulled everything together, sat up straight and was like, oh, I guess I better behave because there's a really crazy person on this train. No more of my nonsense. Don't want anything to get out of hand. Trump is the really crazy person, and the slightly crazy person is like Putin, you know, or Xi Jinping, you know. They're all like, wow, we better buckle up because there's a really crazy person here, and like he's not going to tolerate any of our you know what. So that's Trump's foreign policy.
That could also be really bad.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, 4 years, it was really good.
If it's only 4 years.
No, it could be very bad in the sense that we would also have the country led by a really crazy person.
But for 4 years, it was very good, right? Like, I mean...
It wasn't. I mean, like, he didn't handle COVID well in terms of the public communication, which was extremely important at that time. He was wronged on the Russiagate stuff, but still, it doesn't excuse, like, using your platform as president to go after, like, mid-level bureaucrats at the Justice Department, which he did do. So it's like there's a lot of things. He himself is a norm violator that also inspired Democrats to become a party of norm violation. So I'm not like as keen on like, yes, there were things that were good, like totally icing Soleimani, great. Abraham Accords, terrific. It wasn't all bad. Arming Ukraine, good. But like I'm saying there were other elements of it where it was also like kind of his presidency was an abdication because he was fucking crazy and people did stuff behind his back that hadn't happened to like any other president except for maybe, you know, Woodrow Wilson when he was incapacitated from his stroke. So, I mean, I don't know. Like we're in it's a shitty choice. I guess what I say is the part of your critique that I agree with is I think that you really do have an understanding of this corrupt and rotted elite, and that's important. But I just don't know that I am ready to say that the vessel for that should be Trump, although Trump is an instrument of destruction and he's a chaos agent. So it's like, yeah, like if you want to you got to knock it down before you can rebuild, but knocking it down is going to have some consequences, and I still struggle with it. You're right though about the elites and the Democrats and like the luxury beliefs that everybody has. And by the way, there's Palestinian stuff, which is what none of them realize. It's so bad to say that Israel's committing genocide and that you have a right to all of Israel. That's like feeding this delusion that have screwed the Palestinians over for 75 fucking years. So it's the luxury belief of foreign policy. Just like it's really bad to say abolish the police. It's not good for poor people. It's not good for black people. It's the same thing. It's like not good for Palestinians to take this crazy ultra stand, but they do. It's another luxury belief.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for having us, Adam. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a chaotic episode of Uncertain Things. And thank you,
Batya Ungar-Sargon of Newsweek and author of Second Class, and Eli Lake of the Free Press and the Re-Education.
See you all next time.